And now for another of our probing interviews with lead candidates in this election. Mayoral candidate Basil Cameron told Jim Beatson he wanted to discuss public transport.
I want to talk a little bit about public transport today and how important it is to our community. And I particularly want to start by focusing on what it means when we don't have access to good public transport, the way it disadvantages our community. Young people can't get skills and training, then they're disadvantaged in life. We know that it isolates people who are elderly or unable to access private transport. We know it undermines our economy in many ways as well. If you think about the pool of labour in our community and how that's at a lower level because people can't get skilled, and how it forces young people in particular to compete for low-paid, unskilled work with backpackers instead of being able to really forge ahead and develop a career path for themselves. Access to public transport ought to be considered a basic human right because that provides access to those things that we do consider basic human rights. Access to health services, access to education, and access a reasonable career path in life. So there's a couple of things here that are really annoying when we hear dinosaur politicians say things like, the train won't come back just because I said it won't come back. But these guys are relying on really dodgy data when they look at that sort of thing. When you look at the train study, for example, it used data that was very, very limited to try and work out patronage.
The experience of many people who use the quite cheap and low infrastructure costing bus system that operates in our shire is that buses are mostly empty a lot of the time.
Well, they are, and that's a really good point. And one reason that they don't work terribly well is because they don't connect up with each other so that people have extended choices. You know, the more choices that your transport system offers, the more people will use it. And if they don't connect, you're really limiting the choices. And really, you've hit on a really important point here. Most of our bus services go around our towns and service them quite well, but they don't connect across town. You know, it takes twice as long for a bus to go from Casino to Murwillumbah as the train does, 90 minutes as compared to 3 hours.
Is it a case that many people think that public transport is a very good idea, but end up not using it because they plan to go to 2 or 3 places on a journey and the buses or other transport don't quite match their needs, so they end up taking a car?
Look, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, the point is that the gaps in our transport system are across the region. They're not so much in and around our town. So by linking up like that, you do create more choice. If you hop on a bus in Byron and it only goes to Suffolk, you got one choice. If you hop on a bus in Suffolk and it goes to the train station in Byron, and then you can catch a train to Lismore, Bangalow, wherever, and then you might connect up with other bus services in those towns, you can just see what a huge difference it makes in giving people options. And the more options you can give people, the more comfort and reliability of service, the more that they will use it. And, you know, this has been shown around the world. It's very easy for governments to say, people don't use it. But if governments don't provide the services that actually meet people's needs, well, it's not surprising that it's not going to work as well as it could.
If the rail service is primarily going to be used to bring more tourists from Brisbane and the Gold Coast to our beach, is that the kind of tourism that Byron Shire really needs?
Well, at the moment, Tim, they're coming anyway. You know, they're coming by the carload and busload every day. Our day trippers from the north are by far the biggest component of our visitors at the moment. So what we would envisage with a train service that actually meets people's needs would be that people are actually inclined to get out of the car and move on to rail. So I don't think it'll bring any more people, but it probably will bring a whole lot less cars, and that's got to be good for our community, overcoming congestion. But, you know, from a council perspective, there's so much wear and tear on our roads that we can't keep up with at the moment. That gives us a chance to sort of catch up a little bit on that infrastructure backlog. So, you know, I think there's benefits right across the community there, really.
Moving on with 2 other questions. I know you're very interested in economics. So how can Byron Shire offset the enormous costs of tourism when we have a rate base determined by 3-storey building limit in Byron CBD and 2 stories everywhere else?
That is a really good question. but I'm not sure that that's, I suppose it's a limit, isn't it? You know, you've got a limit on the rating system. You've got a limit that state government puts on us about what we can and can't do. You know, how many times have we talked about how appropriate a bed tax would be for Byron, because it provides an equitable opportunity for our tourist visitors to contribute to our services.
So would you push for the state government to introduce a bed tax?
Absolutely. We'll keep pushing for a bed tax and a better system of funding public transport and services in the region.